Welcome to my 5-minute impact. I hope you're well, hope you're good. Let's talk about some ideas and skills to help you in your business. Now, I love interrogating kind of movies. There's a police scene here where she's interrogating her and she's asking biting questions. And this is all about preventing yourself from interrogating your customer. You see, in business, we often need to soften our questions, don't we? We've got to be able to make our questions come across as more palatable. Maybe we're dealing with vulnerable clients, maybe we're dealing with just quiet people, maybe it's a sensitive subject or something like that. Sometimes we have to soften our questions. So how do we do this? Well, I've learned over the years to soften questions. I've got 3 tips for you, 3 ideas that are going to help you to soften your questions. The first one, well, let me ask you the question first of all, for the first tip, is why do people have eyebrows? This lady's got some eyebrows. Why do people have eyebrows? Well, I was asked that question a number of years ago, and I said, well, it stops the sweat from going into your eyes, and it was wrong. He said, no. The reason why people have eyebrows, Paul, is because of communication. When you're communicating with somebody, your eyebrows should be in sync with your message. So, for example, where should my eyebrows go when I ask a question? That's odd, isn't it? They should go up because your eyebrows accentuate your voice and your message. The two have to be congruent. And that's the point about the first tip, because your tone of voice needs to be congruent with what you're asking or saying to the person. Here's the science for you. If you make a statement, so for example, what time is it today is a statement. Well, it's a question, isn't it? But if you say it in a very level tone, like there, for example, it comes across as a statement. So the weather today is particularly nice. It's a statement, that's all. The weather today is particularly nice. Now, if you want to make a command, then your voice should drop. That's the psychology. So the weather today is particularly good. Is a command. You're saying to somebody, like, please, would you step out of the car? You know, it's a command, isn't it? Please, would you step out of the car is a command. Now, if you're going to ask a question, your voice should lift slightly. Here's the science for you. Questioning should go up a little bit. So would you like to step out of the car? Suddenly, although it's a command, becomes a question. So if you lift your voice slightly at the end of the sentence, it's much more palatable as a question. It's congruent, and the people will be accepting of that question for you. So that's the first tip for you. The second tip, one of my favourite, is what we call pre-framing. Now, pre-framing is an NLP tool, which means you say something before the question, and this softens it. This makes it much more easier to be accepted by the customer. So we've got a couple of examples for you of pre-frames, see if you like any of these. I was wondering, Mr. Brown, how old are you? That's one. Or you could say, tell me, Mr. Brown, how old are you? Or you could say, do you mind me asking, Mr. Brown, how old are you? So there you go, you put this little pre-frame in there, then you ask the question. Do you mind me asking, how old are you? Again, you're putting some voice tone in there too. So you're doubling that one up. May I ask, Mr. Brown, how old are you? Rather than, how old are you? Comes across as a command, doesn't it? It's interrogation, horrible. Here's the third tip for you, and this one actually is to do with body language or facial body language. And this comes from one of my favourite people in the past, is Princess Diana. Now, you may know of her, I'm sure you do. You may have been around when she was around. But Princess Diana had this look about her where she used to tilt her head slightly and then look upwards towards you. Here's another picture for you, which you might like. There's her tilting her head slightly and then looking up. And that's what she did. So the first thing you want to do is, if you're asking a really difficult question, is tilt your head slightly. Just tilt it like that. And that just comes across as much more palatable. And then avert your gaze away. Princess Diana used to look up like that. Avert your gaze. In other words, don't stare at the person when you're asking the question. You can avert your gaze slightly when you're talking to somebody and then look at them back in the eye again. So look away and look at the eye. So when you're talking to somebody, you don't have to give eye contact all the time. And in fact, if it's a strong eye contact, like I'm doing now, that's quite aggressive in some people's books. So my third tip then is to avoid direct eye contact, maybe when you're asking a particularly difficult question. When you're listening to the person, then you need to do the eye gaze. So that's what I call the Diana influence, which I quite like that one, don't you? So there's my 3 tips for you, and my 5-minute impact for you. 3 tips to help you to sugarcoat your questions. In other words, to make them softer and easier to digest. That's why people sugarcoat medicines, don't they? Three there for you. I've given you the inquisitive tone, I've given you the pre-framing, and I gave you the eye gaze as a technique for you. Other than that, have a fantastic week, everybody, and I'll see you again at my 5 minute impact. Bye.